Excuse me, you can't park there." The shrill voice shattered our peaceful afternoon. I showed her our disabled parking permit, but Karen wasn't done. "That doesn't look legitimate. Besides, she doesn't look disabled enough." She stared at my 5-year-old daughter with pure disgust. The nightmare was just beginning. Dot before watching full story. Comment below from where you're watching. Also, like and subscribe for more stories. I had just pulled into the handicapped parking space outside Tony's family restaurant, the same spot I'd used dozens of times before. My 5-year-old daughter, Emma, was already excited, bouncing slightly in her car seat despite her cerebral palsy making movement difficult. The woman marching toward my car looked like she'd stepped out of a country club magazine, perfectly styled blonde hair, designer clothes, and a face twisted with righteous anger. Her name tag read Margaret Whitfield, Chairwoman. "This is a handicapped spot," I said calmly, showing her our valid disabled parking permit hanging from the rear-view mirror. "That doesn't look legitimate," Margaret snapped, squinting at the permit. "I've seen people fake these things. Besides, she doesn't look disabled enough to need this spot." Emma pressed her face against the car window, watching the angry woman with confusion. "Daddy, why is she yelling?" "Some people just have bad days, sweetie," I said. But my patience was already wearing thin. Margaret heard Emma's slightly slurred speech and her expression turned even uglier. "Oh, I see what this is about. You're one of those parents who uses their defective child to get special treatment. What did you just call my daughter?" I stepped out of the car, my voice dangerously low. "You heard me. I've seen your type before. Exploiting sympathy to get the best parking spots, cutting in lines, demanding special accommodations. It's disgusting." I began unloading Emma's lightweight wheelchair from the trunk, trying to stay calm. "Ma'am, my daughter has cerebral palsy. This permit is completely legal, and we have every right to park here." "Legal, maybe, but not moral," Margaret continued her attack. "There are elderly people who need these spots more than some kid who's probably just faking it for attention." Emma was getting agitated in the car, sensing the tension. "Daddy, I'm scared." "Can we go inside now?" "Just a minute, princess," I called back, then turned to Margaret. "Look, lady, I don't know what your problem is, but we're just trying to have lunch. Please leave us alone." "My problem? My problem is people like you who think the world owes them something because of their damaged children." Margaret stepped closer, her voice rising. "I'm the chairwoman of the Maple Ridge HOA, and I know where you live. Maybe it's time your neighbors knew what kind of person you really are." That's when it clicked. Margaret Whitfield. I'd heard that name before. She was the HOA Karen who'd been terrorizing our neighborhood for months with petty complaints and power trips. "Are you threatening me?" I asked, lifting Emma out of the car and settling her into her wheelchair. "I'm promising you," Margaret snarled. "I have influence in this community. I can make your life very difficult if you keep flaunting your situation around here." Emma looked up at the angry woman with innocent eyes. "Hi, lady, I'm Emma. Are you having lunch too?" Margaret stared down at Emma with pure disgust. "Keep that thing away from me." "Thing?" I exploded. "Did you just call my 5-year-old daughter a thing?" "If the shoe fits," Margaret shrugged. "Now move your car. I'm calling the police to report fraudulent use of a handicapped permit." "Go ahead and call them," I said, pushing Emma's wheelchair toward the restaurant entrance. "When they get here, they can also hear about how you just harassed a disabled child." "Harassed? I'm the one being harassed here." Margaret followed us, her voice getting louder. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You people always play the victim." We entered Tony's family restaurant, but Margaret wasn't done. She followed us inside, continuing her tirade loud enough for every customer to hear. The smell of fresh pizza filled the air as I helped Emma into her wheelchair-accessible seat. Today was supposed to be our special daddy-daughter day, but Margaret was determined to ruin it. "Daddy, can I have the cheese pizza?" Emma asked, her words slightly slurred but full of excitement, trying to ignore Theman Lady. "Of course, princess," I said, kissing her forehead while keeping one eye on Margaret. Margaret had taken a seat at the table directly behind us, not even bothering to whisper her toxic commentary to her friend who joined her. "Some people have no shame bringing those children to nice restaurants," she said loudly. "Look at it drooling, making weird noises. Probably can't even feed itself properly. It's disturbing to other families." My blood was already boiling from the parking lot confrontation, and now she was continuing her attack inside the restaurant. Emma had heard some of it and was trying to hide behind her menu, her little hands shaking. The woman, Margaret Whitfield, the same HOA chairwoman who just harassed us in the parking lot, continued her toxic commentary. It's disturbing. Other families shouldn't have to deal with this while they're eating. I tried to stop them from coming in, but the father got aggressive. Her friend looked uncomfortable. Margaret, maybe you should lower your voice. Why should I? Someone needs to speak up for normal families. These people think they can go anywhere just because they have a disabled kid. It's not fair to the rest of us. I stood up and walked over to her table, my hands clenched into fists. We just had this conversation outside. I asked you to leave us alone. Margaret's face twisted into a familiar sneer. Oh, so now you're following me around. This is exactly the kind of behavior I expected. Unstable, aggressive, probably why the kid ended up damaged in the first place. Several other diners were now staring at our confrontation. A few families with children were looking concerned. Some were already getting up to leave. Listen carefully, I said, my voice barely controlled. Stop talking about my daughter. Stop following us. And stop making other families uncomfortable with your hateful comments. Hateful. I'm being realistic. Margaret stood up, matching my aggressive stance. That child is a burden on society. Every accommodation made for her takes resources away from normal children. Every ramp built, every special program funded, it's all money that could go to kids with real potential. You're sick, I said, stepping back before I did something I'd regret. I'm honest, Margaret shot back, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that thing is normal just to make you feel better about your genetic failure. Emma started crying at our table. She'd heard everything. Daddy, why does she hate me? What did I do wrong? The restaurant fell silent except for Emma's soft sobs. Every person in the place was now watching us, most looking horrified at Margaret's behavior. I returned to our table, kneeling beside Emma's wheelchair. You didn't do anything wrong, baby. Some people are just broken inside, and they try to hurt others to feel better about themselves. But she said, I'm not normal, Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. You're perfect exactly as you are, I told her, wiping her tears. Don't let anyone tell you different. Margaret wasn't done. She walked over to our table, towering over Emma in her wheelchair. See how she's crying and making a scene? Margaret announced to the restaurant. This is exactly what I'm talking about. These children can't control their emotions. They disrupt everyone around them, and the parents expect us all to just accept it. She's crying because you're being cruel to her, I said, standing up again. She's 5 years old. She understands every word you're saying. Good. Maybe she'll learn that the world doesn't revolve around her disabilities. Margaret replied coldly. The sooner she understands her place, the better. Emma tried to speak through her tears. I just wanted pizza. Well, maybe you should have stayed home where you belong, Margaret said directly to Emma, her voice dripping with disdain. That crossed every line. I stepped between Margaret and my daughter, my voice shaking with rage. Get away from her now or what? Margaret stepped closer, invading my personal space. You'll assault me in front of all these witnesses. I'd love to see you try. I know who you are. You live in my HO. I'll make sure your life becomes a living hell. The restaurant manager, Jeppy, was approaching our table looking concerned. Other diners were pulling out their phones, some recording, others calling for help. Ma'am, I need you to step away from this family, Jeppe said firmly. You're disturbing other customers. I'm disturbing them. Margaret laughed bitterly. Look around. It's not me making children cry and causing a scene. It's this freak show that shouldn't be in public. That's enough. Jeppe's voice boomed through the restaurant. You need to leave immediately. I'm not going anywhere until this family is removed, Margaret declared. I'm a paying customer and I have rights too. I shouldn't have to eat near that. Emma was sobbing harder now, her hands covering her face. Daddy, I want to go home. I don't like it here anymore. We're not going anywhere, sweetheart, I said, kneeling down to comfort her. This lady is the one who needs to leave. Margaret overheard and exploded. The audacity. You bring your defective child into a nice restaurant. Let her make a mess and disturb everyone and then demand that I leave. I don't think so. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. I'm calling the police. This is harassment and I want this family removed from the premises. Please don't call them, I said, pulling out my own phone to record. I'd love for them to hear about how you've been harassing a disabled child for the past 20 minutes. Harassing? I'm exercising my right to free speech. Margaret was getting more agitated by the minute. Someone needs to tell you people the truth. Your kid is damaged goods, and dragging her around in public is just cruel to everyone involved. Our pizza arrived, and Emma tried to eat through her tears. Her hands were shaking, and she was having trouble holding her slice steady. Margaret saw this as another opportunity to attack. Look at that. She can't even eat properly. Food everywhere making a mess. This is exactly why these people shouldn't be in restaurants. Emma was doing her best to eat neatly, but her cerebral palsy made fine motor control difficult. A small piece of cheese fell from her pizza onto her plate. Messy eater, aren't you, sweetheart? I said gently, helping her clean up. That's okay. We all spill sometimes. Margaret was watching our every move like a hawk. This is exactly what I'm talking about, she announced loudly, drawing more stares from other diners. She's making a mess, disturbing everyone, probably getting food on the floor. This is a family restaurant, not a special needs facility. The only person disturbing anyone is you, I said firmly. My daughter is eating quietly and minding her own business. Quietly? She's been crying and making noise for 10 minutes. Margaret was getting more aggressive. And look at her drooling, making those weird movements. It's disgusting to watch while people are trying to eat. Emma looked up at me with scared eyes. Daddy, why is she being summoned to me? I'm trying to be good. You are being good, baby, I assured her. Some people just have meanness in their hearts, and it has nothing to do with you. Margaret stepped even closer to Artable. Don't you dare teach her that she's not the problem here. She asked the problem. You're both the problem, coming into public spaces, demanding special treatment, making everyone else uncomfortable. It's selfish. The only selfish person here is you, I shot back. A grown woman bullying a 5-year-old child. How does that make you feel powerful? I feel like I'm doing what everyone else is too polite to do, telling you the truth, Margaret said, her voice rising to a near shout. Your daughter is a burden. You're an enabler, and neither of you belongs in civilized society. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Even the kitchen staff had stopped what they were doing to watch the confrontation. Emma was crying again, but trying to hide it by covering her face with her small hands. Yeppe approached again, this time with 2 of his staff members. Ma'am, I'm asking you one final time to leave this restaurant. You're banned from returning. You can't ban me. I'm a respected member of this community. Margaret was losing control completely. I'm the HOA chairwoman. I know the mayor. I'll have this place shut down for discrimination. Discrimination? Yeppe looked incredulous. You're the one discriminating against a child. I'm standing up for normal people's rights. Margaret screamed. We shouldn't have to put up with this. That's when she made her fatal mistake. She turned back to Emma, leaning down close to her wheelchair. Listen to me, you little freak, she hissed. You're not special. You're not brave. You're just broken. And everyone wishes you would stay home where normal people don't have to look at you. Emma's crying turned into heartbroken wails. Daddy, make her stop. Please make her stop. I stood up so fast my chair fell over. Stay away from my daughter. What are you going to do about it? Margaret taunted. Hit me. Go ahead. Try it. I'll sue you for everything you have and use the money to make sure freaks like her are kept away from decent people. She was standing directly over Emma now, close enough that my daughter could smell her overwhelming perfume. Emma was hyperventilating from fear and distress. You want to know what I really think? Margaret continued her psychological torture. I think you're both just looking for sympathy and special treatment. Poor little disabled girl and her devoted daddy. What a sob story, but I see right through it. Someone called the police, I shouted to the restaurant. Several people were already on their phones, but I wanted Margaret to know her time was up. Yes, call them, Margaret agreed enthusiastically. Tell them there's a man threatening violence because someone dared to tell him the truth about his defective child. Emma was having a full panic attack now, her breathing rapid and shallow. The nurse at the table across from us came over to help, kneeling beside Emma's wheelchair. Sweetheart, can you try to breathe slowly with me? The nurse said gently, in and out, nice and easy. Margaret watched this with satisfaction. See, she can't even handle a simple conversation without having a meltdown. This is exactly why these people shouldn't be in public. You're watching a 5-year-old have a panic attack because of your abuse, and you're proud of it? I asked, incredulous. I'm watching the natural consequences of bringing an unstable child into public, Margaret replied coldly. This is on you, not me. The nurse looked up at Margaret with disgust. Lady, you just psychologically tortured a disabled child. You should be ashamed of yourself. I should be ashamed for telling the truth. Margaret laughed bitterly. You people are all the same enablers who pretend these defects are normal instead of admitting their burdens on society. Emma was slowly calming down with the nurse's help, but she was still trembling. Daddy, I want to go home. I don't feel good. We're not going anywhere until the police arrive, I said firmly. This woman is going to face consequences for what she's done. Consequences? Margaret scoffed. For exercising free speech, for telling a parent some hard truths about their damaged child. I'd like to see you try. She pulled out her phone and started recording. I'm documenting this harassment. A man is threatening me because I politely suggested his disabled child might be better suited to staying home. Politely? Yeppe had been listening to everything. Lady, you called a 5-year-old a freak, a burden, and told her she was broken. There was nothing polite about it. I was being honest, Margaret insisted. Someone had to tell them the truth that everyone else is too politically correct to say. The sound of sirens filled the air. Margaret's face went pale for the first time since this started. Good, she said, trying to sound confident. Now they can remove this disruptive family and restore peace to this restaurant. But I could see the fear creeping into her eyes. She was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, she'd gone too far. 2 police officers entered the restaurant. Officer Martinez and Officer Johnson. The entire restaurant erupted in voices, everyone trying to explain what they'd witnessed. She's been harassing that little girl for 20 minutes. She called the child horrible names. She followed them from the parking lot. The little girl is having panic attacks because of her. She said the most disgusting things I've ever heard. Officer Martinez held up his hand for silence. Let's start from the beginning. What exactly happened here? Margaret jumped in first. Officers, thank God you're here. This man has been threatening me because I complained about his child's disruptive behavior. He's creating a hostile environment, and I demand he be removed. That's not what happened, Yeppe said firmly. This woman has been psychologically abusing a disabled 5-year-old for the past 20 minutes. She followed them from the parking lot, harassed them during their meal, and reduced the child to tears with her cruel comments. Officer Johnson approached Emma, who was still being comforted by the nurse. Hi there, sweetheart. Can you tell me what the lady said to you? Emma looked up with tear-stained cheeks. She said I'm broken, and that I'm not supposed to be here. She said I'm disgusting, and that normal people don't want to look at me. She made me scared. The officer's expression hardened as he looked at Margaret. Ma'am, did you say those things to this child? I was expressing my opinion about appropriate public behavior, Margaret said defensively. These people expect special treatment everywhere they go, and someone needs to stand up for normal families. By verbally abusing a 5-year-old? Officer Martinez asked by telling the truth that everyone else is too afraid to say. Margaret replied stubbornly. At least 10 other diners approached the officers, all eager to give their witness statements. Each one painted a picture of Margaret's escalating harassment and cruelty. She said the child was damaged goods, one elderly man reported. She called her a freak multiple times, a mother with young children added. She said the child was a burden on society. Another witness confirmed. Officer Johnson was taking notes, his expression growing more serious with each statement. Ma'am, multiple witnesses are telling us you engaged in sustained verbal harassment of a disabled minor. That's a criminal offense. This is ridiculous, Margaret protested. I have freedom of speech. I can express my opinions. Not when those opinions constitute harassment and emotional abuse of a child, Officer Martinez replied. But Margaret's biggest mistake was yet to come. As Officer Johnson continued interviewing witnesses, she became increasingly agitated, feeling cornered and desperate. This is all blown out of proportion, she told Officer Martinez. Look, everyone here is being dramatic. All I did was point out that some children are better suited to staying home. It's not my fault the kid can't handle reality. Reality? Officer Martinez asked. What reality is that? That she's defective, Margaret said bluntly. That she's not normal. That bringing her to public places is selfish and disruptive to everyone else. Someone had to tell the father that his little freak doesn't belong in civilized society. The officer's eyes widened. Margaret had just admitted to everything on record in front of 30 witnesses. Ma'am, you just confessed to deliberately harassing and emotionally abusing a disabled child, Officer Martinez said slowly. You're under arrest. What? No, Margaret panicked. I didn't do anything wrong. I was just being honest. You called a 5-year-old child a freak and told her she doesn't belong in public, Officer Johnson said, pulling out handcuffs. That's harassment of a minor emotional abuse and potentially disability-based discrimination. This is insane, Margaret screamed as the handcuffs clicked into place. I'm a respected member of this community. I'm the HOA chairwoman. I know the mayor. You have the right to remain silent, Officer Martinez began. But Margaret couldn't stay quiet. That child doesn't belong in public. Someone had to teach her father a lesson about appropriate behavior. Ma'am, I strongly advise you to stop talking, Officer Johnson warned. I refuse to apologize for telling the truth. Margaret continued digging her own grave. These people exploit their defective children for sympathy and special treatment. Someone needs to call them out on it. The officers exchanged glances. Every word out of Margaret's mouth was making her situation worse. For the record, Officer Martinez said that defective child was quietly eating dinner when you began your harassment campaign, and she's 5 years old. As they prepared to lead Margaret toward the door, she made one final devastating mistake. She turned back and shouted at Emma, who was still in her wheelchair, still trembling from the traumatic encounter. This isn't over, you little freak. I'll make sure you and your daddy are kicked out of the neighborhood. People like you don't belong around normal families. Smack. The sound echoed through the restaurant like a gunshot. In her rage and desperation, Margaret had broken free from Officer Johnson's grip for just a moment, long enough to slap Emma across the face, leaving a red handprint on my little girl's cheek. Emma's already fragile emotional state completely shattered. Her crying turned into wails of pain, confusion, and terror. The entire restaurant gasped in shock and horror. I saw red. Pure, burning rage filled my vision as I looked at Margaret, who stood there with her hand still raised, looking shocked at her own actions. But not sorry. You just hit my disabled child, I roared, my voice shaking with fury. The officers immediately tackled Margaret to the ground, both of them working to restrain her as she continued to struggle and scream. She was being disruptive. Margaret shrieked from the floor. Someone had to discipline her. Her father obviously wasn't going to do it. Ma'am, you just committed felony assault on a disabled minor in front of 2 police officers and 30 witnesses, Officer Martinez said as he secured the handcuffs tighter. You're going top prison. The restaurant erupted in angry shouts and condemnation. Yeppe was shaking with rage, pointing at Margareta as she was hauled to her feet. Get her out of here, he shouted. She's banned from this establishment for life. Emma was inconsolable, holding her cheek where Margaret had struck her. The nurse was trying to comfort her while examining the injury. The handprint is clearly visible, the nurse told the officers. This will need to be documented for evidence. The child may need medical attention for trauma. Officer Johnson was taking photos of Emma's injured face, each flash of the camera capturing evidence of Margaret's crime. I want her charged with everything possible, I told the officers, my voice still shaking with rage. She terrorized my daughter for 20 minutes, then physically assaulted her. Oh, we'll be charging her with everything. Officer Martinez assured me, assault on a minor, child abuse, harassment, disorderly conduct, and hate crime enhancements for targeting a disabled child. Margaret was still ranting as they dragged her toward the exit. This is all your fault. If you kept your defective child at home where she belongs, none of this would have happened. Ma'am, every word you say is being recorded and will be used against you in court, Officer Johnson warned. Good, let them hear the truth, Margaret screamed. That thing is not normal. She's a burden on society, and someone had to say it. Even in handcuffs being arrested for assault, Margaret couldn't stop herself from continuing her hateful tirade. It was like watching someone have a complete psychological breakdown in real time. As the police car pulled away with Margaret inside, still screaming about defective children and special treatment, the restaurant slowly began to return to normal. But the damage was done. Emma was traumatized. I was furious. And 30 witnesses had just seen the ugliest display of human cruelty imaginable. Yeppe refused to let me pay for our meal and insisted on calling his wife, who was a child psychologist, to come and talk with Emma. Other families approached us with words of support and encouragement. Your daughter is a beautiful little girl, one grandmother told me with tears in her eyes. That woman was pure evil. I have a nephew with autism, another man said. What she did was unforgivable. I got everything on video if you need it for court. The support from strangers was overwhelming, but nothing could erase what Emma had just experienced. She clung to me, asking over and over why the lady hated her so much. Some people have sickness in their hearts. I told her, it's not about you, baby. You're perfect just the way you are. But as we finally left the restaurant, Emma looked back at the table where it all happened and whispered, Daddy, I don't want to eat pizza anymore. That's when I knew Margaret hadn't just slapped my daughter. She tried to steal her joy, her confidence, and her sense of belonging in the world. That was unforgivable. The war was just beginning. The restaurant manager, a kind older man named Jeppy, rushed over. Ma'am, you need to leave immediately. We've called the authorities. This is ridiculous, Margaret protested. That child shouldn't even be. Get out, Jeppe pointed to the door. You're banned from this establishment forever. But I wasn't letting her escape that easily. I stood between Margaret and the exit, my phone recording everything. You're not going anywhere until the police arrive. I said, you just committed assault on a minor. Margaret's face went pale. It wasn't assault. I barely touched her. You slapped a 5-year-old child with cerebral palsy because she was eating pizza, I said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. There are 30 witnesses here. Emma was still crying, holding her cheek. Other families in their restaurant were comforting her, offering tissues and kind words. One mother, a nurse, was gently checking her face for injury. The handprint is clearly visible, the nurse told me. This will need to be documented. Margaret tried a different approach. Look, maybe we can work this out. I'm the HOA chairwoman. I can make things very comfortable for your family. Are you trying to bribe me after assaulting my daughter? I couldn't believe her audacity. It's not bribery, it's community cooperation. 3 minutes felt like 3 hours, but finally I heard the sirens. 2 police officers entered the restaurant. Officer Martinez and Officer Johnson. What's the situation here? Officer Martinez asked. Before I could speak, at least 5 other diners started talking at once. She hit the little girl right across the face. The child is disabled. It was completely unprovoked. She was saying terrible things about the kid. Officer Johnson approached Emma, kneeling down to her level. Hi there, sweetheart. Can you tell me what happened? Emma wiped her tears. The mean lady hit me because I was eating pizza. It hurt. The officer examined the red mark on her face, taking photos with his phone. That must have hurt a lot. You're being very brave. Officer Martinez turned to Margaret. Ma'am, multiple witnesses saw you strike this child. You're under arrest for assault of a minor. This is insane. Margaret protested as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. I'm a respected member of this community. I'm the HOA chairwoman. You have the right to remain silent, Officer Martinez began, but Margaret couldn't stay quiet. That child doesn't belong in public. Someone had to teach her father a lesson. Ma'am, I strongly advise you to stop talking, Officer Johnson warned. I know the mayor. I know the police chief. You can't arrest me for disciplining a disruptive child. The officers exchanged glances. Margaret was digging her own grave with every word. For the record, Officer Martinez said that disruptive child was quietly eating dinner when you assaulted her and she's 5 years old. As they led Margaret toward the door, she made one final mistake. She turned back and shouted, "This isn't over. I'll make sure you and your defective daughter are kicked out of the neighborhood." The restaurant erupted in angry voices. Jeppe stepped forward. Ma'am, I've been recording this entire conversation for our security footage. Everything you've said is documented. Margaret's face went white as she realized the full extent of her situation. After the police left with Margaret, the restaurant transformed into a support network for Emma. The staff brought her a special dessert with extra whipped cream. Other families stopped by our table to check on her and share encouraging words. Your daughter is beautiful, one grandmother told me. That woman was sick in the head. Jeppe refused to let me pay for our meal. Family takes care of family, he said with tears in his eyes. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing constantly. The story had spread through social media overnight. Someone had recorded Margaret's arrest and posted it online. The video had millions of views with comments pouring in from around the world, all supporting Emma. But the real surprise came when I checked my email. Margaret had sent me a message from jail. I'm willing to drop all charges if you don't press charges against me. I made a mistake, but we can work this out privately. I have connections that can make your life difficult if you pursue this. I forwarded the email directly to the prosecutor's office, attempting to cover a victim. That was another charge to add to her growing list. The legal proceedings moved quickly. Margaret's lawyer tried to argue that it was a momentary lapse in judgment, but the video evidence was overwhelming. Her own words condemning Emma sealed her fate. During the trial, the prosecutor played the restaurant security footage. Watching Margaret slap Emma again, even on video, made me sick to my stomach, but it also showed the jury exactly what kind of person they were dealing with. Emma, brave as always, testified via video link from a child-friendly room. When asked why she thought the lady hit her, Emma said simply, "I think she forgot that everyone deserves kindness." That statement brought several jurors to tears. Margaret was found guilty on all charges: assault of a minor, child endangerment, and attempted coercion of a victim. She was sentenced to 6 months in jail, 2 years probation, anger management classes, and 200 hours of community service at a disability advocacy center. But her punishment didn't end there. The HOA board held an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to remove her as chairwoman. Her real estate license was suspended. Her husband, embarrassed by the public scandal, filed for divorce. The story spread beyond our small town. Emma received letters and gifts from people all over the world who were inspired by her resilience. A local disability rights organization asked her to be their youngest spokesperson. Most importantly, the restaurant incident led to new legislation in our state. Emma's law now makes assault against disabled individuals a felony with mandatory minimum sentences. 6 months later, Emma and I returned to Tony's family restaurant for our regular daddy-daughter date. Yeppe greeted us with huge smiles and Emma's favorite table, the same one where her bravery had inspired a movement. "How's our little superhero?" Yeppe asked, bringing Emma her usual cheese pizza. "I'm good," Emma said with her beautiful smile. "Daddy says, I helped make things better for other kids like me." As we ate our pizza in peace, I watched Emma color her placemat with the same joy she'd always had. Margaret had tried to dim her light, but instead she'd only made it shine brighter. The table next to us had a family with a young boy who had Down syndrome. His parents looked nervous, glancing around as if expecting judgment. I walked over to them. "Your son is adorable," I said, "and this is the most welcoming restaurant in town. Yeppe and his staff will take great care of you." The mother's eyes filled with grateful tears. "Thank you. We've had some bad experiences at other places." "Not here," I assured her. "This is where everyone belongs." As Emma and I finished our meal, I reflected on how one moment of cruelty had transformed into a movement of kindness. Margaret thought she was teaching us a lesson that day. Instead, she learned one herself, that love and acceptance will always triumph over hate and ignorance. Emma looked up at me with pizza sauce on her chin. "Daddy, can we come back next week?" "Absolutely, princess. This is our place and it always would be. No Karen, no matter how powerful she thought she was, could ever take that away from us."